Time for convening having arrived. The Senate will come to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the very last day of this 2013 General Assembly. Chair recognizes Senator from the 53rd.
Good morning, Mr. President. On this 40th legislative day, sine die, later on today, this beautiful day, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
Thank you, Senator, for your good works on the journal. I know for a fact you were here working wee into the morning. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? A reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? Chair is none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators having bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 272 by Senator Harbison the 15th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend
Regulated Industries.
Senate Resolution 691 by Senator McCuna the 29th, a resolution proposing an amendment to the Constitution so as to provide for the dedication of revenue
Rules Committee.
Senate Resolution 692 by Senators McCuna the 29th and others.
Rules Committee.
Senate Resolution 693 by Senator Melissa the 53rd.
Rules Committee.
Through with the order, Mr. President.
Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Assignments Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that the Governor's confirmations be confirmed as submitted. Respectfully submitted, Chairman Cagle, Committee on Assignments, Lieutenant Governor. Mr. President, the Senate State and Local Governmental Operations Committee has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation: that House Bill 544 do pass, that House Bill 569 do pass, that House Bill 570 do pass, that House Bill 588 do pass, that House Bill 609 do pass, that House Bill 614 do pass, that House Bill 622 do pass, that House Bill 623 do pass, that House Bill 624 do pass, that House Bill 626 do pass, that House Bill 628 do pass, that House Bill 633 do pass, that House Bill 634 do pass, that House Bill 653 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Liggina III, Chairman. Through with the order, Mr. President.
It is now time for the morning roll call. Morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Any motions to excuse? Senators, Chair recognizes Senator from the second.
Mr. President, I would like for unanimous consent to excuse the gentleman from the 5th.
From the 5th, without objection, Senator from the 5th will be excused. Chair recognizes Senator from the 56th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the bipartisan duo of the senator from the 40th and the 41st.
All right, 40th and 41st. Without objection, the two senators will be excused. Are there any other motions to excuse? Chair recognizes Senator from the 16th.
Unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 4th.
Senator from the 4th, without objection, the senator will be excused. Chair recognizes Senator on the 44th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 43rd.
43rd, without objection, senator will be excused. I think that's all. Okay. Chair recognizes Senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 49th.
49th, without objection, senator will be excused. Are there any other motions to excuse? Senators will signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The Secretary will unlock the machine. It is now time for our morning devotion. Would ask the senators please take your seats and cease conversation as we begin to prepare the chamber for our morning devotion. It is now time. It's now my honor to recognize the senator from the 31st for the purpose of leading us in our pledge and introducing our chaplain of the day. Senator.
Join me in a pledge to the U.S. flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, and moderation. You all are in for a real treat this morning. I bring to you this morning Dr. David Howard. He is a Georgia native. He is born and raised in Rome and is a graduate of the Armurchie High School and Shorter College. And for those of you who don't know much about Georgia, that Armurchie is a very interesting place. If you look at the spelling, you'll find there's appears to be a missing R in there. He later earned degrees from the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky, and the New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary. Reverend Howard currently serves as the Minister of Education at my church, the First Baptist Church of Bremen. Previously has served churches in South Carolina, Alabama, and others in Georgia. Dr. Howard served 8 years as a missionary to Brazil with the International Mission Board of the Southern Baptist Convention. And since returning to Georgia, he has led mission teams to numerous countries around the world. He is a former trustee of the Shorter College. He is married to the former Sylvia Vargas of Schulenburg, it gets better, Texas. And together they have one son, John Michael, who is a junior now at Berry College in Rome and is an officer candidate with the U.S. Marine Corps. Brother David is also runs marathons. I know he runs several miles on a sort of a daily basis around town and has been an inspiration to me. Would you please welcome Dr. David Howard?
Well, thank you so much, Mr. President and Senator Heath and distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the Georgia Senate. It's quite an honor to be here with you today. And as I was thinking about who I would be addressing today, I wanted to understand you a little bit better. So I took my dictionary and I looked up the word senator in the dictionary. Now that can be a dangerous thing because I understand that the word senator comes from the Latin word senex, which is the very same word that we get our English word senior or seniority. In other words, in its basic form, the word senator designates one who is a wise elder. Now in Brazil, one that is referred to as a wise elder is called a cabelo branco, which means they have white hair. So Senator Heath would fit that description very well. But as I was thinking about you being designated as a wise elder, I began to realize that those in your districts, your constituents, they looked out among their districts and they chose those who they believed were wise elders to represent them well here at the Georgia Senate. And so this morning I want us to look at what God's Word says about what it means to be wise and how we can be wise. Now, you know, they say that today that we're living in the information age, and we really are. I mean, we've got computers, we've got laptops, we've got tablets, we've got smartphones, we've got Google, we got Facebook, we got Twitter. I mean, I believe that we are drowning in information, but we are starving for lack of wisdom. And so this morning, the last day of this session, I want us to see where wisdom comes from and how we can have it. The Bible makes it very clear that wisdom comes from God. In James chapter 1, verse 5, the Bible says this. It says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given unto him." We need to realize that wisdom comes from God. And we must admit that we don't have the wisdom within ourselves to solve the complex problems here in our state. We need wisdom from outside of ourselves, and wisdom comes from God. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 6 states this, "The Lord gives wisdom." Now we know that God is omniscient. He knows everything. He is the all-wise God, and He promises to give wisdom to those who ask. So wisdom is from God. But secondly, I want you to see this morning that wisdom does what is right. You see, that's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing the right thing, such as Austin is the capital of Texas, or that 4 plus 4 is 8. That is knowledge. But knowledge knows the right thing, but wisdom does the right thing. Wisdom is doing what is right. General Norman Schwarzkopf has stated this. He said, "The truth of the matter is you always know the right thing to do. The hard part is doing it." And so that's why you have been elected by your constituents, to do the right thing. James chapter 3, verse 13 says this. It says, "Who among you is wise in understanding? Let him show by his good behavior his deeds in the gentleness of wisdom." You see, wisdom acts. Wisdom does something, and wisdom does the right things. You see, wisdom is not just some philosophical speculation about what should be done. It is actually doing the right thing. You know, Mark Twain has said, "Always do the right thing. It will please some and surprise the rest." So we should always do the right thing. And we can only do the right thing when we have wisdom from God above. And lastly, I want you to see this morning that wisdom, yes, it comes from God, and wisdom does what is right. But lastly, wisdom begins by fearing God. The Bible says that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. In other words, if we're to receive God's wisdom, it's not just some magical formula to ask of Him and He'll give it. No, there is a prerequisite. And we must first fear the Lord our God, which means to reverence Him, which means to respect Him, which means to honor Him, which means we need to receive His Son as Savior and Lord of our lives. And if we do that, then He promises to give wisdom to those who ask of Him. So wisdom begins with God. We must love, fear, honor, and respect Him. And by serving Him and by seeking His will, He will give us His wisdom. Now, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished senators, you were elected to your position because you were honored and respected and chosen by those in your district. And you should be honored for the position you have. But whether or not you hold your position in honor or in wisdom is determined by whether or not you honor and respect and seek the wisdom of our Heavenly Father and seek His will and the wisdom that only He can give us. And as a wise elder, senators, I pray that you would realize that wisdom comes from God. Wisdom does what is right, and the fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. Would you stand with me as we pray together? And now to the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only wise God, we come into your presence at the beginning of this new day to ask of you wisdom. And we confess that we are sinful and have failed in our own wisdom and in our own strength. So we ask that you would give us this day what we cannot give ourselves, godly wisdom. Wisdom to discern good from evil, wisdom to see right from wrong, wisdom to decide truth from lies, wisdom to separate the moral from the immoral, and wisdom to accept the good over the bad, and yes, wisdom to pursue the best even over what is good. And above all else, my Heavenly Father, I pray for all of us in this hallowed chamber that you would help us to number our days that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. We pray this in the wonderful name of your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you. Good to be here. That's good.
I thought he was going to say Senator came from the root word Senate. We got to go there. Let's join right here with the Are there any unanimous consents? Does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, this is the 40th day of our 152nd legislative session, and we are going to be busy today as we do on every 40th day before we say sine die. But every 40th day we try to make it green and clean at the Capitol, and today we have the World Chamber of Commerce and the eco-friendly businesses from all over Georgia on your second floor. Last year we called it Keeping Your Hands Green. We had carbon green footprint before, and this year is the Zero Waste campaign. Back in 1995, I introduced a Zero Waste by 2020 legislation that only portions of it passed in the state of Georgia, and you probably think it's just things that we normally do, but we didn't before then. But it did pass in 43 states, so I'm really, really proud and honored that people are working towards zero waste by 2020. So please remember to go down, especially at 1 o'clock, and get some of the ice cream from the Atlantic Station most famous ice cream place, and candy, and all of the things are organic. We are promoting recycling, reducing, composting, and making sure that we eliminate the waste stream and stop the toxins. Of course, Georgia, especially right here in Atlanta, we're in a non-attainment zone, and we want to reduce the emissions too, so let's keep it on our minds so that our children and generations to come can be healthy and safe in our environment. Also, on another note, being the 40th day, on the very first day when I stood right here and took a picture because I was sworn in for another term and saw all of the new legislators and the seasoned ones coming up, I was hoping that we would have a very great legislative session, but for Fulton County, it's not been that. It's destroying our county, and I was hoping that although we have different ideologies on many things and differences in this diverse state that we live in, I was hoping that we would all look at the bills and vote for the best interests of everyone and not try to usurp anybody's authority. So I am saddened that that happened, although we did have a lot of good legislation and a lot of things that we did agree on. So have a good 40th day, and then when we sign it out tonight, may God bless you and keep you, and I hope I see you next year. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 15th for point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise this morning to bring your attention in an accent a problem that we can easily resolve today, or at least begin to resolve with the passage of Resolution 73. Now, this resolution has been vetted. The purpose of this has been vetted. It had been adjudicated in the courts. And I'm rising this morning to ask our colleagues here in the Senate to pass this resolution. Let's put this behind us. Let's do the right thing for Lathan Rydell Word. Lathan Word went to the prison for something he did not do. The courts ruled in no uncertain term that he was a free man. He's been exonerated, and he walked out of the court after he refused a plea bargain. My understanding is that he had a chance after the earlier conviction was overturned, he could have had the option of a new trial or a plea. He refused the plea because he said he knew he was innocent. Here was a young man who got up one morning thinking that 6 days from now I'll be going to the United States Marine Corps to have boot camp. But alas and alack, it turned out that he was incarcerated for a crime he didn't do. Spent almost 12 years in jail. Free man now waiting for some kind of justice. I believe if we're going to apply the judicial applications that judges render, the courts render, that we should not be selective in our either application or support of those verdicts. If we're going to send people to prison, if we're going to execute people, then we should, at the same time, when they come down with a verdict we personally may or may not agree with, then we should adhere to that as well. We need to do the right thing by Lathan Word. It is wrong to keep him waiting. He was on the agenda the other day. We adjourned. He's back on today. I ask you to do the right thing in your heart and put this back where it's supposed to be. Let's try to make this young man whole. 17 years old, come out 29 years old, and a convicted felon. Of course, that's cleared up. But let's make his life whole. He doesn't seem to be a bitter young man. I would be if someone took 11 years away from my life. I would certainly be that. But this has gone on long enough. Let's clear it from the calendar. We have a chance today to do this great thing in this great body. Do the right thing for a young man who was 17 years old when he was waylaid, so to speak, by the system. The system corrected it, and let us do what the system recommended. It's been vetted over and over again by the Advisory Council, the House, now the Senate. Let's move on and make things right for Lathan Word, who was derailed when he was 17, now at 29, stands ready for us to do the right thing by him. Let's please do the right thing. To forgive is divine, somebody once said. If you have a personal thing against him, if you got a personal philosophy against this kind of thing, that is, these kinds of awards that initially I understand was something like $1.8 million, has now been reduced to $400,000. Vetted by the council, we do these every year. Let's not single him out to put him down and make him do more time or bad time while he's a free man. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I yield well.
Chair recognizes Senator on the 41st on a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. As we face the final day, we still have many issues to address, and some concerns may be alleviated by that time, but right now we know that Georgia citizens have demanded more transparency and honesty in government. Our constituents have asked us to create an environment that supports small businesses, good schools, and jobs that pay well. As we look over this legislative session, we must ask ourselves, as their representatives in state government, have we honored these requests? Have we achieved those goals? I'm hard to say that we have created an environment needed for success of our citizenry. While we have passed the state budget as mandated by law, or will shortly, our financial landscape looks dim. We have given priority to special interest through tax breaks while ignoring $1 billion and growing deficit in public education. Georgia's tax code is weighted down with exemptions and subsidies. Ostensibly, many of these expenditures are created to incentivize and benefit our state through job creation. But there is no system in place to ensure billions in tax incentives currently doled out to businesses equates to a sound return on Georgia citizens' investment. And we continue to slash budgets through the critical times in our state. We need to pass House Bill 454, but more needs to be done to study those exemptions and breaks. We have refused to examine any death diminishing number of students able to go to college through the Hope Grant Program or Hope Scholarship Program. We have turned our backs on health care of almost 600,000 Georgians by refusing to do the Medicaid expansion under the Affordable Health Care Act. Colleagues, we have a responsibility to give more support to public necessities and truly understand the varied constituencies of our state. What are we doing to attract more business in Georgia? Have we tackled transportation? Have we supported our public schools? Not as much as I would like, and I know not as much as many of you would like. Our state agencies are, of course, having a difficult time dealing with the budget cuts. And as the senator from the 45th pointed out the other day, even our state licensing agencies are being weighted down by the burden of underfunding and are inefficient and in jeopardy. This year, while we have worked to address ethics in government, we have a less transparent process and have had a limited debate on many issues as we've engrossed them or used other avenues to do that. On the first day we met, our new rules of this Senate were engrossed, so they could not be voted on. I would like the leadership to look at engrossment as an issue and try to use it only in extreme and rare issues. I also would like to look at Democratic Party bills in a nonpartisan way, and things such as the Ethics Commission and its independent nature that we have in committee to be looked at. Look at a nonpartisan reapportionment committee so that we can have Georgia redistricted in the future in a way that is not partisan. That may benefit the present majority party next time around, so I urge you to consider it. In recent years, legislation has passed making it difficult to vote, not easier, and I think that's something that we need to address as we move forward. Democrats offered many ideas improving our economic, educational, and government transparency. Unfortunately, the majority of our initiatives and ideas were ignored. Whether it is academic credits or waivers for veterans or ideas to improve education or health care, our initiatives were often waved off in favor of partnership. We can and must do better. I want to thank the Lieutenant Governor and thank those in leadership who have at times worked with us to improve this state. I just ask that we continue that process and improve it for all members of this chamber to have an open and fair discussion of their views, their beliefs, their principles, and their ideas to improve Georgia. I pledge to continue to work with what is in the best interest of the citizens of Georgia with each of you across the aisle. Thank you very much. I look forward to a productive Sine Die Day. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 44th for point of personal privilege. Senator from the 44th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Senators, I rise this morning to pay tribute to one of my constituents who passed away, Mr. Lewis C. Reeves. He was a father, a grandfather, a man well respected in his community, a member of the Masons, who participated in the Martin Luther King Ecumenical Service each year, and also in the Martin Luther King Jr. Parade as a member of that body. He worked hard in the community. So I ask you at this time if you would just pause for a moment of silent prayer in honor of the life and memory of Mr. L.C. Reeves of Rex, Georgia. Amen. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 39th on a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, over the past several months, over the past 3 or 4 months, And over the course of these past 40 legislative days, we have heard a lot of discussion as it pertains to ethics and transparency of this body. Much of the reason we have finally begun discussions about ethics and transparency in government is because we have heard from our constituents last year in referenda, both Democratic and Republican referenda. Our constituents told us loud and clear that they want action on ethics. Our constituents were unified in the demand that this body do away with a long-standing gift giving and influencing from special interests to make way for a more accountable and transparent government. With that said, the question I pose to this chamber is, have we adequately provided the ethics needed to give the people of Georgia confidence that we can deliver the kind of government they have long desired? Long before the fanfare and public hearings that accompanied this year's ethics discussion, Senate Democrats presented a legislative agenda that promoted a comprehensive ethics reform package that not only relieved a symptom caused by the government of accountability, but vital legislation aimed at the very core of the problems present. Caps and bans on lobbyist gifts are steps in the right direction. I've already said that the perfect should not be the enemy of the good. And that's why when an ethics bill comes to this floor, if it does this day, I will vote for it, and I hope y'all will vote for it. But what is lacking and what is needed is a structure that an independent ethics commission would provide. Senate Democrats have proposed an independent ethics commission this year, and in years past, the cost of that would be less than 1% of funds from the annual budget. In doing that, this body would legitimize ethics enforcement. You have heard the stories about the Government Transparency and Campaign Finance Commission has repeatedly failed to collect fines as a result of late filings, costing our taxpayers money, but more importantly, causing this body, the legislative branch, to lose the respect of the public. The current commission was forced to forfeit over $7 million in fines due to its failure to send timely written notice. But these failures are a result of the poor structuring and financing Georgia citizens should not have to endure when it comes to ethics. Luckily, it's fixable. We need to go much further in our accountability to the public and demonstrate to Georgians that this legislature is a place of service and good works, and not a playground for lobbyists and for those heavily influenced by them. Democrats believe there is much work to be done. I believe Republicans believe the same. We stand ready to offer alternatives in a bipartisan manner. Mr. President, I yield the well. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator from 33rd for a point of personal. Hold on, Senator. Let's get the doctor of the day. Oh, I'm sorry. I'd like to present the doctor of the day. Dr. Margaret Schaffler is here with us, and it looks like she is a gynecologist, so I don't know how much help she's going to be able to give some of you, but from the Medical College of Georgia, she lives in LaGrange and practices there. Also a resident at the university, or the Emory University School of Medicine. We are very, very honored to have her. to be here, and I'd like for you to join me in welcoming our Doctor of the Day.
Thank you. This is about my third time coming here, and it gets to be more fun every time. I see a lot of interesting things in our first aid station over there. Gynecologists can be helpful. We are sort of considered primary care specialist as well. So I thought I'd tell you that I am from Troup County, West Point, Hogansville, and LaGrange, and we've got a thriving little community down there that we're very proud of. The thing that's happened to me since I was last here is I'm now an employed physician. As you know, small businesses are going under, and so are private practices of medicine, and that has happened to me. I'm not all upset about it. I'm happy to still have a job, but that has been a change, and it just reflects how medicine is changing. I want to thank you for what you do here. I know this is the last day, so give it all you've got. The end is in sight. Thank you.
Well said. Well done. Good. Good to see you again. Chair recognizes Senator from 33rd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I don't do a lot of these. I don't do as many personal privileges as some, but I will tell you this. I make up for it, I know. But I felt obligated to do this because, unfortunately, I was at a hotel in Nashville, Tennessee, on my way back from visiting my grandchildren when I was surprised to find out that they had honored Bob Ewing and Jeffrey. And I didn't get the chance to say how much they had meant to me over the years, and I'm going to take just 1 minute to do that. Bob has been here longer than I have. He was a reader when he started out with Hamilton McWhorter. And when Frank Eldridge passed away, several of us from the minority party and the majority party got together, and the one thing I told Eric Johnson was he realizes who the majority party is. He will be loyal to it, but he will tell the truth. Don't take his dignity and his integrity away. He's become a very dear friend of mine, and I'm awful mad at him about leaving. I thought I'd beat him to it. Jeffrey, kind of fellow when I called the other morning about a resolution I was real interested in, he just answers you in moos. Don't worry about it, Senator, it's done. So I wanted to add just 2 cents worth of many, many years of feeling and appreciation for dear friends. It'd be also not right if I did not mention, although I heard they did a wonderful job with the Pettis family, it'd be not right of me to mention that Dick Pettis was probably the finest and fairest journalist we've ever had here. He did an article on me one time called "The Last Democrat in Cobb County." And in that article, he said the senator is a prolific reader, to which Governor Barnes replied to him several weeks later, "Well, it is, Dick, if you're talking about big letters and large pages." And I think we only had one disagreement one time. He talked about some folks going to Arizona on the DOT board, and he said, and Senator Thompson is chairman of the Transportation Committee with. Well, I finally got to get back at Dick on that. I came up here and said, by the way, I wasn't chairman of the Transportation Committee when that happened. Later he said, but you were on the committee. Of course, I reminded him I paid my own way, but we laughed about that. You didn't find another jab in the paper like you might from some people who feel like their articles may have been criticized. You won't find another banner article trying to make up for it or trying to slap back at you. I know that God will bless his soul and that he'll be remembered in the state Senate from now and always. And the last thing I want to mention to you, as far as I'm not involved in this, but I thought maybe some of you might like to know that the resolutions that we present to people who have been injured by the state is something that we started years ago. And the reason for that is if the state has wronged you, if they have hurt you in some way by mistake, and you are innocent of those things and had to take part of your life and give it to the penal institutions, it's the only way they can get a resolution to the situation, because we can't give anybody gratuity. The other thing is the state has sovereign immunity. So they have a constitutionally created commission made up of Secretary of State and others, constitutional officers, who decide even whether to pass it on to the House before they do anything. That commission has to say, yes, it's deserved. Then the House passes it, then the Senate passes it. Well, this young fella had 10 years of his life where the door slammed behind him every day for something he did not do. And the resolution amount, as I looked at it, for that $400,000 over 20 years is less than $20,000 a year. Now, folks, you can have the ideological or philosophical viewpoint that the state should never reward somebody because maybe the court wasn't wrong based on the information they had. Bottom line is, it doesn't help somebody who's been wronged. And I hope that you will make sure this young fellow is made whole and that he's got a good second chance at having a life. So I hope you will join the senator from the 15th and the senator from the 38th and others who want to do the right thing by this man. We've done the right thing pretty much for everyone else by resolution every year. So thank you very much for let me take your time.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 2nd for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, members, I come before you to acknowledge the mourning of a loss of life in Savannah, Georgia. This year, we lost a young man by the name of Brother J.P. Jones, a 91-year-old public servant. What's unique about Brother J.P. Jones is that he was one of the original 8 African-American policemen in Atlanta, Georgia. And he was the last of the original 8 to leave this life and go into heaven. But Brother Jones lived the last 45 years of his life in Savannah, Georgia, where he was a valued community servant, a great public figure. But he was a modest man. But his service to the Atlanta Police Department, to becoming first in the Atlanta Police Department to go through those trials and tribulations, we should applaud. Brother J.P. Jones has gone on to heaven. But also there are other notable people, Brother Roscoe Riley and Miss Agatha Cooper, also great public figures in Chatham County, who also left this world and went on. And I'm here today to applaud these great public servants for their service while on this earth. And we know that they're blessed in heaven right now for carrying on the work, carrying on God's work. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair recognizes Senator from 38th for a point of personal privilege.
Mr. President, colleagues, this is our last day, the 40th day, and I was remiss in mentioning on our first day something that appeared in the paper, a couple of, I think it was on the, 2 Sundays ago. It brought to my attention the fact that in 1963, and I'll just read a little bit of the article to you. It was in the AJC, so if you have an opportunity, it was almost a full page on the front of the living section, and then it continued with 2 pages inside the paper. And what it was entitled was the Class of '63. In 1963, Leroy Johnson, who you saw, I think, last year, was honored here, became Georgia's first black legislator in more than 50 years and 90 years for the Senate. He had won re-election. He had won an election 2 months earlier, and when he did so, he walked into, so the article said, a black-owned diner and received standing ovations. But on that day, January 14th, 1963, there were no cheers, as he feared there was could be outright hostility. However, when he was sworn in, there was mostly indifference. That was a time of systematic change and stubborn resistance in the South. The day before, a black professor and his wife visiting from South Africa had been turned away from worshiping at St. Mark Methodist Church in Atlanta. And there was controversy simmering in Atlanta over a barricade that the city built on Peyton Road to keep blacks out of the adjoining white neighborhood, which is like 2 blocks from where I live now. The air was filled with excitement and dread. Leading up to opening day of the session, terms like New Era, New Style Senate, appeared frequently in the newspaper, referring not only to Johnson's presence in the legislature, but a recently reapportioned Senate that would change Georgia's politics to its core. The legislative session that opened in 1963 came 2 years before the federal passage of the Voting Rights Act, which would finally eliminate barriers such as literacy test and poll test designed to deter blacks from registering to vote. And of course, we are finding a way to do it differently in this day and time, but we're still doing it. The act also would establish the principle of pre-clearance, which charged the U.S. Department of Justice with approving changes to voting regulations in Georgia and 8 mostly southern states. As you know, currently the U.S. Supreme Court is considering overturning that provision. Yet in Georgia, the courts upended the political system that had allowed rigorous segregationism to flourish and gave voters the chance to reset the dynamics in the legislature. Before 1963, Georgia's governmental structure was ruled by the county unit system, a scheme that inordinately gave rural regions political sway over Atlanta. As you know, the county unit system was set up as a sort of electoral college that rigged statewide races in favor of rural counties. That system apportioned state legislators to represent acres, not people, giving rural areas a huge advantage. For instance, before the system was thrown out, the 8th Senate District near Tifton, which had 3 sparsely populated counties totaling 22,000 residents, had 1 senator, and Fulton County, with 560 residents, also had 1 senator. A number of judicial rulings in 1962 doomed the county unit system, and the U.S. Supreme Court, in a landmark decision written in 1963, as the Senate was in session, upheld those decisions, ultimately ruling the system unconstitutional and coining the phrase "one person, one vote." The courts ordered that Senate districts to be reapportioned to reflect population, a move that afforded cities and minorities more power. In 1963, Johnson was one of, may I say it again, one of 7 senators representing Fulton County, which was the case up until we reapportioned in 2011, which was when we did the redistricting, and we have obviously senators that do not live in Fulton County now representing Fulton. It took us how many years to get to that change? Almost 50 years to change that. What we did last week with House Bill 171 allows North Fulton to redistrict maps that discriminate against the ability of voters to elect the candidates of their choice. North Fulton devised maps using the Voting Rights Act that will resegregate Georgia. As the chaplain of the day said this morning, senator means wisdom, and he asked us to use that wisdom to do good for Georgia. So I'm asking us, one, read the article. Please think about what you do as you deliberate today and as you come back next year to deliberate, and let's stop trying to take away people's rights to vote. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Senator on the 54th for a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I will be brief. I just want to remind us, as the battles that rage today in this House, 150 years ago, real battles were raging all around us. And this fall will represent the beginning of the campaign in our state, in Georgia, for the Civil War. Sesquicentennial 150th anniversary of those events, and I would like to, on behalf of the Senator from the 53rd who stepped out, make sure everyone knows that one of the largest reenactments probably in the history of Civil War reenactments will take place this fall in September up in Chickamauga. The Battle of Chickamauga, though it does not get as much press as some of the other battles that were waged on in the northern states, was one of the most pivotal from a historical standpoint and one of the most costly from the standpoint of lives, American lives, both sides of the conflict lost. And then the Battle of Chattanooga followed that, and then when we move into 14, we'll have a lot more dates to remember as folks spilled blood on Georgia soil when states fought states. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator on the 47th. 47th. Oh, no. You want points of personal privilege? Okay, we're not ready for anything else. There is a consent calendar of privileged resolutions that are before you. Is there objection to the consent calendar of privileged resolutions? Chair recognizes. Without objection, the privilege resolutions are therefore adopted. Secretary will read a resolution.
Senate Resolution 700 by Senator Hill IV and others. A resolution recognizing and commending the East Georgia State College men's basketball team on their outstanding 2012-2013 season and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chairs none. The resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 701 by Senator Hill IV and others. A resolution congratulating Dr. Paul Kerpovics and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chairs none. The resolution is adopted.
Senate Resolution 702 by Senator Hill IV. A resolution recognizing and commending Dr. Hudson Powell Jr. and for other purposes.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair is none. The resolution is adopted.
Through with the order, Mr. President.
Now we have a consent calendar of resolutions. Read the caption.
Senate Resolution 71, Congress urged to enact fair tax. Senate Resolution 72, Senate State Fair Tax Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 203, Dick Pettis, Senate Press Conference Room, designate. Senate Resolution 228, Health Insurance, requesting the repeal of $100 billion federal sales tax imposed by Affordable Care Act. Senate Resolution 247, Senate Expungement Reform Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 331, federal, state, and local governmental agencies urged not to contact with persons, businesses engaged in investment activities in Iran. Senate Resolution 340, Independent Physician Practices in Georgia, create Senate Study Committee. Senate Resolution 345, Senate Select Alternative Funding for Medicaid and Other Health Care Federal Funding Committee, create. Senate Resolution 423, Georgia's Congressional Delegation, Congress, and President Obama request immediately resolve the national debt crisis. Senate Resolution 427, brew pubs and alcoholic beverages tastings, create Senate Study Committee. Senate Resolution 499, Senate Free Hunting and Fishing Licenses for Veterans, Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 502, Southern Alliance for Clean Energy. Senate Resolution 531, Transportation, Georgia Department of, maximize the use of funding mechanisms aimed at reducing diesel emissions. Senate Resolution 597, Georgia Program Integrity, Senate Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 598, Senate Public-Private Partnership Study Committee, create. Senate Resolution 618, Senate Study Committee on Public Transportation in the Metropolitan Atlanta Region, create. Senate Resolution 623, Senate Select Study Committee on Aaron's Law, create. Senate Resolution 629, U.S. Congress encouraged to develop, implement a practical plan, international borders. House Resolution 46, Pierce Levitt Klein Memorial Bridge, Newton County, dedicate. House Resolution 107, Joint Study Committee on Medicaid Reform, create. House Resolution 502, Joint Study Committee on Mental Health and School Violence, create. Through with the order, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes Senator from 33rd.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President. Which is? Parliamentary inquiry.
State inquiry.
Mr. President, even though I'm sure my side of the aisle is probably split in their feelings about the fair tax, I would like to ask that we vote on that separately. I'm not intending to make it a debate. I would just ask that we pull it off.
If there is objection, we have, there is objection, and SR 71 will be pulled off to vote separately.
Thank you very much.
All right. Chair recognizes Senator from the 39th.
SR 228, Mr. President, is
SR 228.
that I'm going to object to.
You're objecting to 228.
Yes.
We'll pull that off and allow you to vote separately. Any other objections on the consent calendar for resolutions? All those in favor of SR 71. One. Okay, so just let me, what we will do is vote on the consent calendar of resolutions, excluding those that have been pulled off, and we'll vote on those individually. So is there, Senator from the 55th, what purpose you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Senate Resolution 72, I'd like to see that pulled off as well.
You would like 72 pulled off as well?
Yes.
Without objection, you will have it removed. Any other motions? Mr. Chair, recognize Senator from the 5th.
I would ask that Senate Resolution 228 be pulled off the calendar and voted separately if it's not.
It has. 228 has been pulled off. Just if I could have the Senate's attention, just so everyone knows, SR 71, SR 72, and SR 228 have been pulled off of the consent calendar and will be voted on separately. Does that sound? Do y'all want to vote on all of them separate? Chair recognizes Senator from 38.
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Would like to also pull off Senate Resolution 423.
423. 423. Without objection, 423 will be pulled off. Senator from 39th, was that the one that you were wanting? Anyone else? Chair recognizes Senator from the 5th.
629.
629, the senator is moving on. Any others? Okay. Question now is on the adoption of the resolutions that are before you on the consent calendar for resolutions. Is all those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. We are now going to vote on the individual resolutions. The first one up is SR 71. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 38 and the nays are 16, and the resolution has been adopted. Now the question is on SR 71. This is the Senate Study Committee on the Fair Tax. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. This is SR 72. Like to welcome the First Lady of the 18th District here on the chamber. An honor to have her. Also, the First Lady of the 31st District is here as well. Let's give her a round of applause. Great honor to have y'all with us. Thank you. The next order of business is SR 228. This is the health insurance. All of those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. And the Secretary will unlock the machine. You're voting on SR 228. On the adoption of the resolution, the ayes are 35, the nays are 16, and the resolution has been adopted. Now we are taking up SR 423. 423, this is the Georgia's congressional delegation resolution. All of those in favor of this resolution will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Oh, I'm sorry, Senator from 36. I thought I...
Thank you, Mr. President. Parliamentary inquiry.
State inquiry.
Isn't it true that this resolution is filled with assertions that are ideological in nature and don't at all demonstrate the facts of the matter around the nation's national budget and debt?
I know the senator has very strong feelings on this issue. On the resolution, the yeas are 37 and the nays are 12, and the resolution is therefore adopted. The next order of business will be Senate Resolution 629. 629 is dealing with the U.S. Congress encouraged to develop and implement a practical plan dealing with the international borders by the senator from the 29th. Senator from the 5th, what purpose you rise?
Just parliamentary inquiry.
Okay, state your inquiry.
Isn't it true that I had asked that Senate Resolution 629 be pulled off the consent calendar because I was concerned about the topic and we were moving so fast I wanted to make sure it was not on there, but I have had time to read it, and I don't personally have, while it's up to each member to vote their own conscience, if we had had a longer time to read these, it would not have been, I would not have asked that it be pulled off the calendar for a separate vote.
Not a problem, Senator. I understand. All those in favor of this resolution, Senate Resolution 629, will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. What senators do I have? Senator from the 47th will stand by. Senator from the 32nd. Senator from the 47th and 43rd. Y'all be standing by. Special orders. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 44 and the nays are 4, and this resolution is therefore adopted. We do have a local consent calendar, that is before you. Is there, Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed on any of the bills on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed to the bills on the local calendar.
Is there objection to grant report of committee on the state and Chair recognizes Senator from the 39th.
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
I am.
Suspend for just one moment. Let's quieten down the chamber. Quieten it down. I'm having difficulty hearing the senator speak. Chair recognizes Senator from the 39th. Are you good now?
I got what I need.
You're good? All right. We have no filed objections on any of the local consent bills on the local consent calendar. Is there objection to agree to report of committee which on the state and local governmental operations which favor pass the bill? Chair is none. Report of committee is agreed to. All those in favor of the local consent calendar will vote aye. Those opposed, no. And the Secretary will unlock the machine. On the local consent calendar, the yeas are 49 and the nays are 0, and the local consent calendar is therefore adopted. Showing favoritism. Chair recognizes Senator from the 43rd. First out of the gate. He's been a good boy this year.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. Mr. President, I move that the Senate adhere to its disagreement to the House substitute to Senate Bill 121 and that a conference committee be appointed from the 1st, 43rd, and 53rd.
Whoa.
That's your
You
space.
don't get that. You
That's
don't
your
get that.
space.
You don't get
Am
that
I invading
privilege,
your
there,
space?
Senator. You just get to move. So I tell you.
Can't blame me for trying, Mr. President.
All right, Secretary will read.
Senate Bill 121 by Senator Ramsey, the 43rd, and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to prestige license plates and special plates for certain persons and vehicles so as to provide for special license plates for retired members of the General Assembly and for other purposes.
Is there objection? Chair points the senator from the 1st, senator from the 43rd, and the senator from the 53rd. Chair recognizes senator from the 47th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the Senate adhere to its disagreement to the House substitute to Senate Bill 160 and that a conference committee be appointed.
Read the caption.
Senate Bill 160 by Senators Ginn of the 47th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 13-10-91 of the OCGA relating to verification of new employee eligibility, applicability, and rules and regulations and for other purposes.
Chair point, is there objection? Without objection. Chair points senator from the 9th, senator from the 23rd, senator from the 47th. 9th, 23rd, 47th. Chair recognizes senator from the 47th again. Lucky man.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that the Senate agree to the House substitute to Senate Bill 177 as amended by the Senate.
That bill is in the book. Everybody follow along. All the bills that we will be dealing with will be in your book. Secretary will read the caption.
Senate Bill 177 by Senator Ginn of the 47th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 7 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to the Department of Economic Development so as to change the membership of the Georgia Tourism Foundation and for other purposes. Senator Mullis of the 53rd offers the following amendment. Amend the House Committee on Economic Development and Tourism substitute to Senate Bill 177 by deleting line 4 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. Grant sharing to amend Article 2 of Chapter 16 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to the State Properties Code so as to authorize the Commission to manage the utilization of administrative space and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Senator the 19th. What purpose you rise?
Inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, I appreciate the Secretary of Senate's office putting these in numerical order.
Absolutely. Done a great job, as they always do. Senator from the 47th, you wish to speak to this motion? No? Chair does recognize Senator from the 47th to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the Senate Bill 177. It's been back and forth. It's been amended a little bit along the way, but we're trying to make sure that if you look at your yellow sheet, you'll see that we've got the governor appointing up to between 9 and 20 members. I don't know if there's any questions on the bill, but it's an economic development bill. As chairman of economic development in the Senate, I want to make sure that we're lending ourselves to creating jobs and putting people back to work. If there are no questions, I'll yield the will.
Chair recognizes Senator in the 41st for a question.
Senator Yield.
Yes.
Just to be certain on the posture, if, for instance, we were to vote for or against this, this possibly could be the final action on this bill. Is that correct?
That's what we would hope.
And the amendment that's in there, are you also going to talk a little bit about that or explain exactly what that purpose is, or do you want the Senator from 53rd to do that?
Well, they believe that the amendment that came out of the House was they wanted to have the chairman of economic development in the Senate and the chairman of economic development in the House appointed as members of this. And we want to make sure that there's somebody there from the legislative body, but we don't care whether it's the chairman of the economic development committees in the respective groups.
Senator, further yield.
Yes.
So that's what came over from the House amendment, but you're agreeing to it as amended, and the amendment is from the Senator from the 53rd. Is that correct? Or it's from you. I'm sorry, you're light.
I'm sorry.
My
pen was a little dry on ink, but that amendment is from me.
Okay.
This is one that we've worked with the governor's office on moving it forward, and we want to try to make sure that we complete our actions and get on with the business of the day.
Well, I appreciate your time. It's not true that this is important whenever we have a vote that might be the final vote that we see a bill. It's important that we understand what we're voting for, and I appreciate you taking that time.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd.
Will Senator yield?
Yes, from a friend from the 42nd.
Is it not true that we have a bill that amends Article 1 of Chapter 7 of Title 50? And you've talked about the first part of the bill, but the second part of the amendment deals with something totally different. Isn't that right?
Not as it could be construed that way.
Well,
I mean, you know, I'll grant you.
And I'm not objecting. I just wanted to know what the purpose of this second part of the amendment is that's new and deals with a different subject matter. Is it? I have no objection to it that I know of. I just didn't know what it did since we just got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The and basically, you know, what we're doing there is working with the university system and the Board of Regents to clean up some language in that pretty self-explanatory. That they can manage their own space that they lease. We, just so you know, we voted this out. The don't remember the exact vote count, but I don't think there were any opposition to it when we voted it out. It's gone back and forth, and
Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th.
Senator Yield.
yes.
Senator, on the first bill, the substitute, it's my understanding that you are adding the Senate and the House Chairman of Economic Development. Is that correct?
That was what the House amended the bill to be.
Right. So you're adding to that board.
Well, it was actually to put the House Economic Development Chairman and the Senate Economic Development Chairman into that mix of 20 members, which the
Well, Senator Furthergill?
yes.
Senator, is it not true? I don't have a problem with that. The second bill, though, that you're adding on to it, you're dealing with the Department of Labor, and you're controlling and taking away their authority to do leases. Is that not correct?
Yes.
Well, Senator, I don't know if anyone else in here has any trepidation about that, but I'd just like to know why are you doing that, or why is that included in this bill? I mean, this is a pretty drastic step in my opinion, and I just don't understand it and wanted further information if you could provide it or someone else could provide it. It seems like you're stripping away the power of the Department of Labor to control their leasing, their space, their functioning ability.
Well,
okay. Stay with me for a little bit. Chair recognizes Senator from 33rd for a question.
Senator Yield.
Yes.
Isn't it true? I've been trying to work with this administration, and I've found ways that I've been able to do it. I'm very proud of that, but I have a question. You had evidently, are you the author of the bill?
Originally.
Originally. You had evidently, is it not true, wanted to have the representation of our committee chairs from the legislature on economic development on this commission. Is that right?
That was actually amended in the House, so that was not the original intent of the legislation.
Well, what I'm saying is, and it seems that the administration would rather appoint the members of the General Assembly, but not particularly our chairman. Is that right?
I believe that's correct.
Well, let's just say if one of us were sitting down there as governor, would you appoint the chairman of economic development, or would you appoint one of your floor leaders?
That's the governor's prerogative.
Well, I'm going to vote for it either way. I just want to know if we want to give up our prerogatives.
Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Senators yielded the will on the amendment. The senator from the 47th has moved that Senate agree to the House substitute, clear my screen, please. Clear my screen. No, I need that. The senator from the 47th moved that the Senate agree to the House substitute as amended, Senate Bill 177. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the motion, the yeas are 42 and the nays are 8, and the Senate has agreed to the House substitute as amended. Chair recognizes Senator from the 32nd.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate adhere to its disagreement to the House substitute to Senate Bill 62, and that a conference committee be appointed.
Read the caption.
Senate Bill 62 by Senator Hill of the 32nd and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Chapter 8 of Title 31 of the OCGA relating to care and protection of indigent and elderly patients so as to establish the federal and state-funded health care financing programs overview committee and for other purposes.
Is there objection? Without objection, the chair will appoint the senator from the 4th, the senator from the 17th, and the senator from the 32nd. That is the senator from the 4th, senator from the 17th, senator from the 32nd. Okay, let me have the Senate's attention for just a moment. Just a moment. 3 bills, minority party. I know that y'all are wanting a heads up. I'm just going to give you 3 bills that we anticipate taking up next for that will be being removed from the table if the Senate agrees to those. The first bill would be, what? I gotta have my glasses. House Bill 434, which is the Senator from the 27th. Senator from the 27th. The second bill that will be taken up would be House Bill 463, Senator from the 6th. And 3 and 4 would be HB 451, which is the Senator from the 29th. 29th would be your bill, along with HB 506, which is also Senator from the 29th. Just to give everybody a heads up on what would be available for those 4 bills before our lunch break. Senator from the 27th is recognized. We need some.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I bring to you House Bill 434. This bill is a fairly straightforward bill.
Senator, hold on. I'm sorry. I need you to go back and make a motion to pull it off the table.
Okay.
I'm sorry. That's what I was recognizing you to do, and I was distracted with another issue. Chair recognizes Senator from the 27th for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I make a motion that we remove House Bill 434 from the table.
434 is moving it off the table. Is there objection? Without objection, the bill has been removed from the table. Read the caption.
House Bill 434 by Representative Weldon III and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 8 of Chapter 14 of Title 44 of the OCGA relating to liens of mechanics and material men, so as to provide that special liens included and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. The Senate Judiciary Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 434. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Part 3 of Article 8 of Chapter 14 of Title 44 of the OCGA related to liens of mechanics and material men and for other purposes. Amendment 1. Senator Mkunin of the 29th offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Judiciary Committee substitute to House Bill 434 by striking as provided for in this code section on line 42 and inserting in lieu thereof subject to subsection E of code section 44-14-361.1. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator 27 to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here we go again. House Bill 434 is a fairly straightforward bill. What this bill essentially says that if you have a contract with, as a business person, and you have a contract with somebody that says they owe you X number of dollars, including equipment, labor, and what have you, or you're a contractor and you have a contract with somebody for a building or whatever you have with them, this bill just simply says that you have a right to place a lien on that amount that's owed to you under that contract, and that's all this bill does. Now, there's an amendment on it from the senator from the 29th, which just clarifies some technical language and moves the code section on it to 14.361. That's all it does, and I don't have an objection. We don't have an objection to the amendment. If there's no questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the will.
No questions, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator 29th to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. All the amendment does is correct a drafting error in terms of the code section that we were referencing. As the author said, there's no objection to it. I'd be glad to answer any questions if there are any. If there are not, I'll yield the will.
There is a question. Chair recognizes Senator 42nd for a question.
Well, Senator, yield.
Certainly.
Is it not true that that you're correct when you say that this merely makes it subject to the full value of the contract and it references the appropriate code section?
That is correct.
The questions on the adoption of the floor amendment authored by the senator from the 29th. Is there objection? Without objection, the floor amendment is adopted. Now the question is on the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection? Without objection, committee substitute as amended is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the Porter Committee which favor pass the bill. Chair is none. The Porter Committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair is none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 52 and the nays are 0. And this bill, MC Rex constitutional majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 6th for a motion. Senator from the 6th. Motion to move from the table.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we move from the table House Bill 463.
Read the caption.
House Bill 463 by Representative Rice of the 95th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 7 of Chapter 2 of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicle license fees and classes so as to change the registration rates under the International Registration Plan and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Finance recommends that this bill do pass by substitute. The Senate Finance Committee offers the following substitute to House Bill 463. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-5C-1 of the OCGA relating to motor vehicle title fees so as to provide an expedited method to appeal fair market value of a motor vehicle and for other purposes. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Chair, is there objection? Without objection, the bill will be removed from the table. Chair recognizes Senator from 6 present the bill.
Good morning. House Bill 463 is a continuation of the fixes that were needed on House Bill 80 and House Bill 266, basically the allowing for the new title fee to be integrated into our local governments as easily as possible. Simply what it does is it allows for tax commissioners to take into account things that matter when assessing the value of a used car. If there's any questions, I'll yield the well, but this is very straightforward, and it's going to be helpful to our local governments so that when people have an issue with their title fee, they're able to come in, and the tax commissioner has language in this bill that allows them to assess the value of a used car in a more standard fashion. Mr. President, if there's no questions, I will yield the well.
There are questions. Okay. Chair recognizes Senator from the 41st for a question.
Senator, yield.
I will.
Senator, I support the general purpose of this being more fair to the consumer, but do you have any idea what type of revenue impact it may have, or if we change the valuation of these vehicles, what is the impact?
There shouldn't be any impact on this because it merely allows for definitions for a tax commissioner to use when deciding fair market value. It takes into account mileage, et cetera.
Senator, further yield, wouldn't you expect people to end up having a lower value? And I mean, I feel certain that there's a financial impact. If it hasn't been looked at and you don't have any idea, that's fine. But wouldn't you think it would have some impact?
I guess there's a potential for that, but I think that this language is all about definitions and explaining how a tax assessor and a commissioner can help.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 33rd.
Senator, isn't this just a measure to keep the tax commissioner from having to go by a book value that may be way out of line with a particular automobile or vehicle? It could be a very high mileage. It could be some things that have differed or been changed about it. And it allows him to have that option to protect the public. Just as we have a right to, is it not true, to appeal our property taxes? But on these evaluation and assessments, it gives them another tool to be fair to the public. And there might be a small financial impact, but not one that I think you can put your finger on. It's just the right thing to do. Is that not right?
That is correct. Thank you for your statement. And just to further the point really quickly, I was on the Finance Committee, fortunate to sit on that. We had a lot of deliberation. And one of the people that came down to speak to this measure was a tax commissioner from Whitfield County. And this is in direct relation to fix that issue that he raised to make this a more smooth process for our local governments.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 9th for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the Senator yield?
Yes.
Isn't that true? There is a fiscal note on this bill from Georgia State.
There was.
And the fiscal note, if you took the high and low and averaged it over 5 years, was $100 million.
The senator so speaks.
But your statement, which I don't disagree with, is that it's kind of hard to figure out how it would be $100 million because I as an individual can right now appeal my case, and if I have a lot of miles on my car, it will be reduced anyhow.
Correct?
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the well.
Senators yielded the well. Chair recognizes Senator from 33rd to speak. The bill.
Thank you, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. I'd like to echo what the senator from the 6th has said. You should not be judged on by one book that would address all cars and makes, not having the individual car or the car in question to be valued. If we don't change this or give them an option of looking at the initial evaluation of it, and to have that option so that they can do that, then you're going to be taxing people on things they don't own. They don't own a new Lincoln such and such 2014. They own a 2014 Lincoln such and such. It's got 120,000 miles on it and a dent on the fender. And it's been handled very roughly. So I mean, if you don't, you're going to be taxing people for things they don't own by a standard that's just one page in a book, meaning that if it was perfect. And I don't think the general public's going to know that they've got some options. I don't think they know what we've done to them so far. If you look at the way the new car business is going to work. But this is something for the public, and I think we probably better do it if we're going to implement the things we already passed that does something to them. That's just my feeling. I yield.
You wish to answer a question? Chair recognizes Senator 31st for a question.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Cautiously.
Let me ask you to grab your copy of the bill there, since it's.
I don't have it with me.
I think it's not open right there. Let me direct your attention to line 28, which refers to the fact that this. The fair market value as determined by the county tag agent pursuant to this subparagraph shall be appealable as provided in section E of this code section. So
I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
I don't doubt that.
Yeah.
Already in the code there is a process whereby you can appeal the value of your motor vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
So why do we need this mechanism in there where you can, upon written application and supporting documentation, change the value?
Well, I'll ask you, I don't know how many people in this room knew before we walked in here today, how many knew that there was an appeal you could make in writing to appeal the taxes on the value of your vehicle. I never have known that. I figured that there was a standard, and from what I've heard, the standard is not fair. So I think this, if nothing else, is an educational tool to let people know that they're going to be able to take their individual situation to their tax commissioner. Now, I would add that with all the things that we've done that are going to be a little bit unpleasant to the public, even if they win on the other end a year later, on some of the ad valorem taxes and things that we've moved around on our new tax code, I would say that this is a present back to them that's right. And if we don't do it, I think basically, with the knowledge the public has now of what they can do and what they can't do, you're just going to be, I think, continue to pass on a value that's not there.
Senator, isn't it true that I don't disagree that we ought to have a process to evaluate the actual condition of the vehicles and those type things, but that process is a new process that was put into law in HB 386, and is the law that, in fact, this code section is referring to when it talks about the appeals process. So I believe it to be the case that prior to 386, there was a digest printed by the state, and everybody went by it, and everybody that owned a 64 Chrysler paid the same, or tax on the same value.
Well, let me answer it this way. I passed a bill one year called the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights.
Tabor?
Say, I couldn't understand that. I passed a bill called the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, and what it did was to give a list of things that the taxpayer had on their side, like the presumption of value needed to rest on the county side and not with the individual. Nobody knew before then what they could do and what they couldn't, except business people who were used to appealing their property taxes. But moms and pops didn't, and some business people didn't. And what that did was to make bold statements on your tag application and your ad valorem taxes and everything else, that you have a right, the General Assembly says you have a right to know this, that, and the other, and to appeal this, that, and the other. Well, after we passed that, truly, it did make a difference. People were aware that they had certain rights. And I think this is one of those things that's very well written so that the tax commissioner knows he's got a responsibility to value those things if he's asked on that particular vehicle and the way it stands and sits. So I think it's a good thing to pass, and it's not my bill. I'm just saying I think it's an excellent way of doing it, and I would have no reason to wonder why. I mean, I would have a reason to wonder why we wouldn't. So.
Thank you, Senator.
We got two buttons.
There are no further questions. Did you? I wouldn't think so. Question on the adoption of committee substitute. Is there objection? Without objection, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree to report of committee which fail pass the bill. Chairs and unreported committees agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs, none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed, no. Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 29th will be standing by. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 51 and the nays are 1. And this bill, having received the Constitution majority, is therefore passed. Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th.
Mr. President, I move to remove House Bill 451 from the table.
Read the caption, 451, House Bill 451.
House Bill 451 by Representative Smyrie of the 135th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 15-6-2 of the OCGA relating to the number of Superior Court judges for each judicial circuit, so as to provide for an additional judge of the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit and the Oconee Judicial Circuit and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes Senator, or is there objection? Without objection, the bill has been removed from the table. Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th.
Mr. President, House Bill 451 should look similar to you. It is identical to Senate Bill 165. What it does very simply is it adds a Superior Court judge to the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit as well as the Oconee Judicial Circuit. And I'll be glad to answer any questions. If there are none, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
No questions. Before we call for the vote, whoa, don't let her leave. Go get it back in. We would like to welcome to the floor of the Senate the First Lady of the 47th Senatorial District with us today. Thank you very much for coming and being a part of our closing day. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the Porter Committee which fair will pass the bill. Chairs none. Porter Committee has agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? Chairs none. Main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Questions on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed no. And Secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from the 29th will stand by on another motion, and then we will be breaking for lunch. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 49 and the nays are 0. And this bill, AMC Rex Constitution majority, is therefore adopted. Chair recognizes Senator from the 29th.
Mr. President, I move to remove House Bill 506 from the table.
Read the caption.
House Bill 506 by Representative Smyrie of the 135th and others. A bill to be entitled an act to amend the General Act entitled an act to amend Chapter 6 of Title 15 of the OCGA relating to the Superior Courts and for other purposes. The Committee of the Senate on Judiciary recommends that this bill do pass. Through with the order, Mr. President.
Is there objection? Without objection, Chair recognizes Senator on the 29th to present House Bill 506.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 506 simply provides a method for the judges of the Chattahoochee Judicial Circuit to select their chief judge. There are no questions, Mr. President. I'll yield the will.
There are no questions, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? Is there objection? Agree in the Porter Committee which favor pass the bill. Chairs none. Porter Committee has agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chairs none and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? Question is on the pass of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed no. Secretary will unlock the machine. I'd like to welcome a former colleague of ours here in the State Senate, Michael Meyer von Bremen, that's with us there from Albany, and his lovely bride too. So good to have both of you with us today. Thank you. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 47 and the nays are 0. And this bill, AMC Rex Constitution majority, is therefore passed. The Senate will stand at ease for our lunch break. They have prepared lunch in the ante room. We will be back at, let's say 1:15. 1:15. Conferees, I think, are scheduled for 12:45. 12:45. Conferees.